17. That is the number I need you to hold on to, because in about 4 days it is going to decide more about Eala's US Open than any crowd, any flag, any viral clip out of Flushing Meadows. 17 is her seed. It is the highest seed any Filipino has ever carried into a Grand Slam singles draw. Not the highest seed she has ever had, the highest any of her countrymen have ever had in the history of the sport. And almost nobody talking about her this week is talking about that number. They are talking about something else entirely. Stay with me. She landed in New York a few days ago wearing a Nike visor, stepping off a flight into a city that has decided, somewhat suddenly, that it belongs to her. Somewhere in the arrivals crowd was a fan in an inflatable blue dinosaur suit with a Philippine flag cape sewn onto the back, who had flown in just to be near her. That is not a detail I am inventing for effect. That actually happened. That is the temperature of this story right now. Flushing Meadows sits in Queens, a few train stops from one of the largest Filipino communities in the United States. There is no version of this tournament where that is a coincidence in how it feels. When Eala walks the grounds, she gets a security detail most 21-year-olds ranked 20th in the world simply do not get. Phones go up. Flags go up. The noise follows her from practice court to practice court days before she has even played a competitive point. She is not even done with the undercard yet. On the 27th, 2 days before the singles draw begins, she plays an exhibition against a top 15 player as part of the tournament's opening festivities, and she is also entered in mixed doubles, paired with a Canadian former top 5 player, in a wildcard slot that has already put her on a court against one of the tournament's glamour teams. Her official main draw singles match does not begin until August 30th. The draw itself is not even released yet. It comes out this Thursday. And already, this feels less like a tennis tournament and more like a homecoming for a country that has never had one of these before. That is the story everyone is going to tell you this week. The crowd. The flags. The feeling. It is a beautiful story, and it is true. It is also not the reason she might actually go deep in this tournament. Here is where I think the real story is hiding. Rewind 3 months, and this looked like a very different season. At Wimbledon this July, Eala walked out against the defending champion, Iga and beat her in 3 sets, 7-5 in a first-set tiebreak that went the distance, then 6-2. That result alone would have been the headline of her year. She rode it to the 4th round, the deepest she had ever gone at a major, before Jasmine Paolini beat her in 3 tight sets to end the run. Then came Washington, the Mobadala DC Open, in August, and this is the part of the season that actually built the foundation for everything happening in New York. Eala walked through 5 matches against players who had no business losing to her on paper. She beat Qinwen Zhang in a first-round battle that went the distance. She beat the defending champion Leylah Fernandez. She beat the 2nd seed, Alina Svitolina. She beat a 4-time Grand Slam champion, Naomi Osaka. And in the final, she ran into the tournament's top seed and world number 3, Jessica Pegula, the same player who had beaten her in a 3-set Miami semifinal the year before. Rain swallowed the final almost whole. It began on a Sunday afternoon, got suspended after Pegula took the first set and grabbed an early lead in the second, and did not resume until Monday, nearly a full day later, after storms rolled through Washington for hours. Eala had to warm up over and over through the delay, not knowing when or if she would step back on court that day at all. When play finally returned, most careers end that final right there, on the scoreboard, down a set with the rhythm broken by a rain delay. Eala did not let it. She leveled the match at 6-4 in the second, and then delivered a 3rd set so complete she did not lose a single game. 6 games to nothing, against the 3rd-ranked player alive. She became the first Filipino, man or woman, to win a WTA Tour-level title. Ever? That was the peak. That was the moment the entire tennis world stopped treating her as a nice story and started treating her as a threat. Then the run hit a wall, twice in 8 days. In Toronto, she first had to survive Caty McNally in a gritty 3-set battle, 6-3, 5-7, 6-4, needing a medical timeout mid-match to have her ankle strapped, Before that 7-match hard-court winning streak ran into Belinda Bencic in the round of 16. Bencic, an Olympic gold medalist playing some of the best tennis of her career, beat her in straight sets, 6-4 and then 6-0 in barely an hour. No excuses to make there. She was simply better that day, start to finish, and the bagel in the second set said so plainly. A week later in Cincinnati, the pattern almost repeated in reverse. Eala got a first-round bye, then watched her second-round opponent retire with a foot injury while trailing badly, a win that arrived without ever really testing her. In the third round, she ran into Amanda Anisimova, a top 10 player fresh off her own deep run at that same event the year before. The first set alone lasted over an hour, with a single game stretching 20 minutes and 13 deuces. Eala won it. Anisimova leveled in the second, and in the decider, Eala broke immediately to lead 2-0, one clean hold away from putting real distance between herself and a top 10 scalp. Anisimova won the next 6 games without dropping serve again. 2 tournaments, 2 exits, both earlier than the story wanted. And for about a week, the conversation quietly shifted from what is she capable of to, is this finally where it catches up with her? Here is the part almost nobody sat with long enough to notice. Both of those losses came early. Not in the semifinal, not in the final, where a deep run would have cost her the most in terms of matches on her legs heading into a Grand Slam. They came in the 4th round and the 3rd round, which means the 2 results that looked like her worst weeks of the summer were, in the coldest possible accounting, the 2 weeks that gave something back to her body before the biggest 2 weeks of her year. She did not choose to lose. Nobody chooses that. But a slam is not one match, it is potentially 7 matches over a fortnight, and the version of Eala walking into Flushing Meadows now is one accidental week of recovery lighter on wear than the version that would have existed had Toronto or Cincinnati gone the other way. And here's the number underneath the number. Since March, Eala has lost on a hard court only a handful of times. Across 10 hard court tournaments this year, she has won something like 7 of every 10 matches she has played on the exact surface she is about to compete on for the next 2 weeks. That is not a clay specialist wandering into the wrong event. That is her best surface, at the biggest event of the season, at the peak of her ranking. There is a second, quieter thread running under both of those losses that the highlight packages will not show you. This has been a season where Eala has repeatedly walked onto court against players ranked well above her and simply refused to be intimidated by the number next to their name. Beyond the 5 wins in Washington, she has picked up multiple top 10 victories across the year. Enough that by the time she reached Cincinnati, she had already strung together a run of 5 straight wins against top 10 opponents before Anisimova finally snapped it. A player who folds under pressure does not build a streak like that in the first place. She built it, then lost it once, to a player who was, on that particular night, simply sharper for 6 straight games. That is a very different sentence than the one the panic implied. Because that ranking climb is the other thing that got buried under all the crowd footage. 1 year ago, in August of 2025, Eala walked onto a court at this same tournament ranked 75th in the world, having never won a single Grand Slam main draw match in her career. She went down 5-1 in the deciding set against Clara Towson, the 14th seed. That match should have ended there for almost anyone. She forced a tiebreak, saved match point after match point, and won it 13 points to 11. First Filipino, in the Open era, to win a Grand Slam main draw match. That is where this story actually starts. 1 year later, she arrives at this same tournament as the world number 20 and the 17th seed, a full 55 spots higher in the rankings than she was for that Towson match. That seed means something concrete. It means she cannot face a top 16 player until at least the 3rd round. No unforgiving opener against a top 10 name, no soft door slam shut before she even gets going. She has the fresher legs the accidental rest week gave her, and now she has the gentlest possible draw structure the ranking system will allow. Nobody designed that combination on purpose. It simply arrived, the same week, from 2 entirely different directions. I want to be honest about the other side of this, because I am not interested in selling you a clean story. Bencic beat her fair, In straight sets, no asterisk. The Cincinnati collapse from 2-0 up in the decider is a real pattern to watch, not a fluke to wave away. Her best result at any Grand Slam remains a single fourth round. A best-of-3 loss in a Masters event and the physical grind of 7 matches at a major are not the same mountain, and she has not yet proven she can climb the second one. If you want to argue this ends in the second week and not deep into the second half of the draw, the numbers support you. I am not going to pretend otherwise. But step back from the bracket for a second, because this stopped being just a tennis story a while ago. The Philippines has never had a tennis player people talk about in bars and jeepneys and group chats the way this country talks about basketball. Little Manila empties into Flushing Meadows because there has never before been a Filipino athlete on this stage to empty into. That crowd, the flags, the dinosaur suit at the airport, none of that is manufactured. It is what happens when a country that was told this sport was not for them watches one of their own not just show up, but actually contend. That feeling travels well past anyone who has ever picked up a racket, because underneath it is the oldest sports story there is. Somebody nobody expected anything from, quietly becoming somebody everybody has to answer to. It also explains why the commercial noise around her deserves a second look instead of a dismissal. Sold-out gear, a growing sponsor list, a crowd that shows up for practice sessions like they are ticketed events. Easy to file all of that under distraction. Under too much too soon for a 21-year-old. I think it is closer to the opposite. Markets and sponsors do not usually get ahead of a result by accident. When that much attention arrives before the biggest tournament of her life instead of after it, it is usually because the people writing the checks already ran the numbers on where this is going. She is not the finished version of this yet. Either a first Grand Slam quarterfinal is the next real ceiling to break. And this seeding is the friendliest run at one she has had. A push into the world's top 16 by the end of the season would put her in direct qualification range for next year's biggest events without depending on wild cards or lucky draws. There is a real, live conversation now about whether she can chase a spot at the WTA Finals in November. The season-ending event for the tour's best 8 players, a stage no Filipino has ever come close to. And there is the mixed doubles wildcard running alongside all of this. A partnership that, if it strings together a few rounds in this same tournament, adds an entirely separate storyline for a country watching 2 draws at once instead of 1. None of that happens automatically. All of it becomes plausible the moment this tournament goes well, and none of it existed as a realistic sentence to write about a Filipino tennis player 2 years ago. Widen the lens even further, and the pattern holds. A player who was outside the world's top 100 as recently as last year, filling qualifying draws and hunting wildcards, is now someone broadcasters build entire pre-tournament packages around. The path from there to here was not one clean line. It went through a Miami semifinal as a wildcard, through a maiden WTA final lost in a tiebreak, through a Grand Slam debut win that took 5 match points to finish, and through a summer where she beat both a defending Wimbledon champion on grass and a 4-time major winner on hard courts inside the same 8 weeks. Every one of those results, including the 2 that looked like failures in August, sits on the same upward line when you stop measuring it week to week. So here is where I land, and I will come back and own it either way. Toronto and Cincinnati were not the moment the season caught up with her. They were the moment the season, almost by accident, gave a little of itself back. The crowd did not build any of this. A title in Washington built it. 2 years of climbing from outside the top 100 built it. And now a seed number nobody is talking about enough might be the quiet reason all of it holds up for 2 more weeks in New York. 17 got her here. What happens with it is the only part of this story that has not been written yet. Tell me in the comments, do you think Eala breaks her 4th round ceiling this US Open, or does the physical grind finally catch up with her in the second week? In a few years, when everyone knows this name you'll want a record of when you knew first.